Merchander's Luck is a 1982 book by C.J. Cherryh. It's part of her Alliance Union universe, and also part of her Merchander series, but it can also just be read as a standalone book. Basically, the only reason that I decided to read this book was I was procrastinating going to sleep, scrolling Reddit, as one does, and I was looking on r/printsf, and on there they had some prompt that was like, oh, can someone suggest a book about blue-collar workers in space? And I thought it would be pretty cool to read about. I think that science fiction is kind of diluted with these extremely grandiose stories of people saving the galaxy. And I thought it would be cool to kind of check out the story of an everyday person in space. But yeah, so I found the book on that thread and I decided to give it a go. And is this a book about a blue-collar worker in space? No, but it's a very similar vibe. The main character is this dude named Sandor, and he's a guy who's like technically asset rich because he owns this merchander ship, but he's also swamped in debt, so he's constantly working to make ends meet. Cherryh's Alliance Union universe is set in the future, but as far as I can tell, even though humanity is spacefaring, there are no aliens, and politically the landscape is kind of divided into like three factions. There's the Earth Company, Alliance, and Union. Then there's also this pirate gang called the Manziani, and they're like a big fear factor for the merchanters, naturally. And I'm pretty sure that this book takes place outside of the solar system that we know and love, but it all kind of takes place in space or at like space stations, so I can't tell for sure. So anyway, operating on the fringes of society are these things called merchanters, which are like these space version of long-haul truck drivers. They pick up cargo, they drop it off at another place, and they get paid for it. Shipping, though, is like a family business. So, if your family's the Johnsons might own a big spacecraft and everyone operates sort of out of the same domain. Cherryh never mentioned how continuing lineages works, so I'm just going to kind of rely on my own ignorance and just assume that they like meet people at space stations or something. So what's this book about? Basically, the main character, Sandor, the guy that I talked about earlier, he meets a girl at a space station, and he crushes on her, and he follows after her and gets her to join his crew, and they go on an adventure together. All right, let's talk about the characters. So basically, it shifts perspectives between character 1A, which is Sandor, and then character 1B, the girl he's interested in, Allison. Sandor is the 27-year-old aforementioned dude who owns the merchander ship that's also in incredible debt. He's got complexity to his character, though. Like his whole family was killed in a Manziani raid. And because of that, he's kind of dealing with the trauma of that for the entirety of the book, as well as the pervasive loneliness that's come as a result of that. Alternatively, Allison is a Riley. The Rileys are the family that kind of own and operate the Dubliner, or the Dublin Again ship, and the people on it are called Dubliners. And you can kind of think of like the Rileys as like the Amazon of the merchander ship business. It's a super profitable ship. So yeah, they do a bunch of jobs, make a bunch of money, a lot of people. But she's not happy with the work that she does there because of how profitable the family is and sort of the politics within the ship. And like people don't age very much either because of like, sci-fi tech. It's really hard to move up. The process to move the ranks is super hard. So she's kind of seeking more adventure. So you can kind of think of it like when she joins Sandor, it's like a like paper pushing accountant joining like a exciting new startup or something. A lot of the fun of the characters is the dynamic between like the uppity Dubliners and then Sandor's more like blue collar aesthetic. The Dubliners give off this like holier than thou attitude that like I kind of felt like was like a lot of people that I've met that went to like Ivy League schools. They act like they're the shit, and they kind of are, but they're also pretty cocky. The interaction between Sandor and the Dubliners and the growth of the characters on both sides is super compelling and very rewarding to see them grow and continue to trust each other as the story and the adventure continues on. Okay, I gotta mention another thing, which is that I love New Age science fiction novels, But one thing that I absolutely despise about the genre, and if you've seen a lot of my reviews, you've probably heard me mention stuff like this, is the extremely boys' club nature in which they're often written, and this one is absolutely not that. Like, sure, Sandor does have sex with Allison in, like, the first chapter, but Allison is not like some stupid girl. She's attractive, and she's available, but she holds her own, and she's a super strong, qualified professional. Also, of the handful of main characters, of which there are maybe like 6-ish, there are also 2 other women on top of Allison, and neither of them are, you know, ever sexualized, of those 2 women. And one is actually portrayed as like a super powerful, like exceptionally badass woman. And, you know, the icing on the cake is that it all makes sense too. Like, at least in forms of the gender, the diversity is totally not shoehorned in either by Cherry. All right, so next I want to talk about my favorite part of the book, by far, which was the vibe. As a reviewer, the main thing I want to do, way more than like explaining the plot or the characters or whatever, is portray how the book makes you feel. And to a greater extent than any book I've reviewed on this channel, for sure, this book made me feel like I was part of a universe that was alive. A lot of books are like, you know, when your friend is telling you a story with characters you don't know and like a situation you kind of get. And it's like, okay, logically, I grasp how this felt, but you don't really feel like you experienced it. And this book, it totally felt like a lived experience. It's a world with a ton going on. It's like, you know, sometimes you play open world video games and there's like nothing going on in the background. There's no images on the walls, all the characters you can't even talk to, and it just feels super dead. You know, none of the NPCs have any dialogue. But sometimes you play open world video games and like every NPC you run into has a mission for you. There's always something to look at, etc., etc. And it just feels like a living, breathing universe. And this book absolutely feels like this very alive open world game. My cozy reads are Star Wars books. And it's by far my favorite franchise. It's what got me back into reading after a long hiatus of many years of pretty much reading nothing at all. And my favorite thing about the franchise is that if you watch a movie, any character that's in the background for like 5 seconds, they probably have a novel about them. And like any character, you know, that's talked to or something, they've probably got a comic. So this sort of extremely robust universe and like filled out universe, it sort of makes it feel like there's a lot more weight and depth to every interaction that goes on between characters in the Star Wars universe. And this book, more than any book I've read, at least recently, you know, for a long time, outside of Star Wars, it felt like I got that same feeling with Merchanter's Luck. It did something that a lot of books try to do, but do not do successfully, and that's make me care about the universe that it's written in. It instilled a sort of sense of wonder. Like, there'd be a cool ship, and I'd be like, oh, I would love to read a book set on that ship. Or, oh, this character is awesome. I'd love to see some story from that person's perspective. And just having that feeling, I hope it shows you, like, this is a universe that feels fleshed out, and it feels interesting, and, like, I really want to be more acquainted with it. I want to read more books in this series, or in, you know, this universe. And it just makes the experience so much more fun. But most importantly, when you've got a compelling universe, the characters and the storylines, they just fall into place, right? It's so much easier to make a compelling story and compelling characters and interesting plot when the reader is bought into the universe and the story, which I totally was. Okay, so now that I've given it like a resounding stamp of approval, I do gotta mention just a small handful of things that were not exactly my cup of tea. All the action in this book took place in like a 20% chunk of it. So sticking with that video game analogy, it kind of felt a bit like an introductory mission, you know, that you get at the beginning of the game, where you're kind of learning the mechanics rather than participating in a ton of actual action. There's also a fair amount of explaining that needs to be done about the political goings-on of the universe, and I don't know, I think it was well written, but I just don't care about it too much. And then finally, and this is like the most unfair thing of all for sure, there was a lot of like ship-specific lingo, since a lot of it takes place on ships. they'd be like, oh, the galley, and like the fore, he goes to the aft, and all that kind of stuff. And I just hate when books do that. Like, I get it. That's a me issue, a skill issue, but it just kind of gets annoying and I get lost because I don't read a ton of books on ships. So I don't know. I don't like when they have to rely heavily on words like that and like a bunch of directions like that. I get kind of lost, but take that with a grain of salt because I don't really read a lot of books like that. I think to write a good universe, you need a healthy mix of, one, you need things that are explored, and two, things that are implied and that invoke curiosity. But the things that aren't touched on need to be not like confusing and more like something you're interested in learning more about. And this book misses the mark occasionally, but it hits way more often. Sure, the story is great, but the thing that I felt constantly intrigued by and interested in was learning more about what was going on in the universe. And it all wraps up with a great conclusion. Not to keep referencing Star Wars, but it feels like like the end of like a blockbuster Star Wars movie. Like, it feels like the credits would roll, I would let out a big smile and I'd like rub my hands together in satisfaction. Like when I actually read the ending, I kind of let out like an audible, okay, when I completed the last page. Before I end, I want to go on a tiny bit of an aside though. So this is the first book in a long time that I've read that I kind of picked up and read on a whim. Pretty much all the time that I pick something to read, like I'm pretty anal about like, I want to read something that's worth my time. And because of that, I pick it from like a list of like, oh, the top 10 best books about this, or sci-fi books you have to read, or whatever. Or, it's from some reviewer. That's where I get a lot of my books. Like, some reviewer will say, oh, this is a great book. I'll be like, stop, don't tell me about it. I'm going to go read it. And because of this, I don't pick a lot of books just kind of by myself to read. And I got this on Reddit, so like I guess it's not fully on myself. It was part of a Reddit thread, but it didn't have like a ton of traction. But I just saw it and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go for it. And it definitely added like a fun extra element to the reading. Like I felt like I owned the experience more, right? Whether I liked it, whether I didn't like it, it was my decision. And it kind of added this extra like kind of gambling element to like fun version where you can't lose money, where it was like, this could be like the best book I've ever read, or this could be like the shittiest book ever written. And I don't know. I could have found the best book ever, worst book ever, whatever, but it was my decision and my experience. And because of that usually extremely anal nature of like picking books, I don't often get this sentiment. I'm not gonna say that I'm gonna like do that all the time forever, but it was fun to like mix it up and do kind of like a randomish pick. Like I know a lot of book reviewers, they have like random book picks, and I don't know, man, I don't want to like commit a week to like reading a book that's completely ass, or that I'm not interested in at all. But I don't know, there was a fun element doing it like this. So I don't know where I'm going with this rant, but I guess if you're kind of like me, and you're extremely specific and you want to read only the best of the best or things very worth your time, there's some value in just going with something random, or just like finding a book at Half Price Books, and like if it's got a good vibe, I don't know, just go for it. And who knows, it could be like your next favorite series. Thanks for watching.